Hello and welcome to the Marley Bird YouTube channel, brought to you by Red Heart Yarns. In this video, I will show you how to make this super cute tea party cardigan by my good friend Ellen Gormley. This is such an adorable cardigan that is perfect for that little girl in your life that you want to make just something a little special for them. Whether it's in the fall, winter, spring, or summer, this is the perfect little accessory. It uses 1 or 2 skeins of Red Heart with Love yarn, depending on the size you are making. This is also a free pattern available over on redheart.com. I will put a link to the pattern and all of the materials you will need right down there in the video description box below. And while you're down there, please smash that like button, as my kids say. They really do get a kick out of it. Go ahead, gather the materials and get your pattern. Join me back here. I'm going to walk you through everything you need to know in order to make this really great pattern. Before we jump in with the actual pattern, I want you to take a look at the cardigan and understand how the construction is done. As you take a look down here and I open up the cardigan for you, you'll notice I have it upside down. And the reason for this is because you actually begin at this point. You will begin at the neck. And as we work down the cardigan this way, you will increase for this portion of the sweater, which is called the yoke. Once we get past the yoke, we will divide up for some sleeves, and you'll have the sleeves work separately, and then you continue on with these stitches to work down the body of the sweater. This is a very common construction and one that's really awesome because you could try on the sweater as you go. Now, if you're making this for a little girl, obviously it's not going to fit you, but maybe she's around you while you're making it. You could have her try it on as you go, which means you could custom fit it ever so slightly in the length, maybe a little bit in the width, and you have a lot of different options here. Looking at the pattern, which is free on redheart.com, you can see you have your full list of your materials over on the left side of the pattern. As we start to look at the actual pattern instructions, you will notice that there are a multiple of sizes and they're divided with parentheses. So the first size, which is for a 2-year-old, is outside of the parenthesis. And as you're looking within the parenthesis, you'll see 4, 6, 8, and 10. Those are the sizes for that year of child. So for a 4-year-old, 6-year-old, 8-year-old, and 10-year-old, that's the size you will find within the parenthesis. So as I look right here for the cardi measurement, this 25.5 I'm looking at right there refers to the 2-year-old size. And then the first number inside the parentheses, which is 27, refers to the 4-year-old size. 28.5 is for 6-year-old, 31.5 is for 8-year-old, and 33 is for 10-year-old. That's really important because as you move on to the actual instructions for the pattern, you want to make sure you are following along with the correct number either outside or inside the parenthesis. So one of the ways you can make sure that you don't get off track and that if you put this down and you pick it up later on, you know what size you're making, take the time, grab a highlighter and highlight the size you're making, and then anywhere in the pattern you see parentheses, highlight that same number in the sequence within the parenthesis that refers to your size. That's really going to help you make sure that you're following along, because it would be nothing worse than if you're trying to make a size small, then all of a sudden you jump up and make 3 sizes bigger and it's just not going to follow along. So the first thing you can do is come down here when you get your highlighter, and when it says chain and it gives you different numbers, that's the first one you would highlight the number that pertains to the size you're making. Hopefully that makes sense. That's the first thing I want to point out about this pattern. The second thing I want to point out about this pattern is there are special stitches that you will need to learn. Don't worry, I'm going to show you them right here in the video. But these abbreviations are important for you to understand. When you come to them in the pattern, you might not understand what they are, but you can always go back to a pattern where it says special stitches or special instructions, and it will give you the detailed detailed construction for that stitch. So there are detailed instructions here for what a cluster is and then what the cluster's pattern is. So that's where you will refer to when it comes to something that you might not know in the pattern. Another thing that I want to show is here at the end of the pattern where it looks like it's a hand-drawn sort of image, and it looks like the cardigan shown upside down, which is just what I showed you, and there's a bunch of measurements here. This is called a schematic, and this is what is made by the designer to be able to tell you, to show you, these are the sizes you are trying to achieve, you should achieve based on your gauge in order to make sure this sweater fits the size you are making. Once again, you'll notice that the numbers are all consistent with the one number outside of the parenthesis and then 4 different numbers inside the parenthesis. So if you also want to use your highlighter down here in the schematic to highlight the measurements that you are trying to achieve with the different parts of the instruction of the pattern, this is a good place to do that. So now you kind of can see what's going on here. You'll also notice in this schematic, because we will be working around, meaning we're going from the front edge of the cardigan all the way around to and to the side, across the back, to the other edge of the cardigan and back, you'll see that those numbers have an arrow beneath them, and has like an arrow, and it goes around sort of like a half circle to an arrow. And that's to let you know that that particular measurement is not just this 2 fronts, it also is to encompass the back measurement as well. So that way you don't get confused. When you find these lines here where it has a dot on either side, that's to let you know it's from this point to this point. So that would be from this bottom hem to the top of the shoulder, so this highest point of the shoulder, there's a dot there, and then a line, and then a dot. So these measurements right here pertain to that distinct length. Hopefully that makes sense a little bit. Now that we've looked at the pattern, let's go ahead and jump in with the first part of the yoke. I will have you go ahead and start off by chaining the number that is designated for the size you are making. For the video today, I will be making the 2-year-old size, which is it has me beginning with the chain 71. So let's jump in with that. I am using Red Heart with Love in the colorway Papaya, because I know many of you are going to ask. I'm going to bring this over here. And I've gone ahead and I have chained my 71. I figure that by this point in this kind of experience level pattern, you know how to do a chain stitch, and I didn't want to waste your time with that. So I've already done my chain 71. For your other sizes, of course, please chain the amount that pertains to the size you're going to make. You'll notice once again that this refers to the yoke. And remember, the yoke is this portion of the sweater. It's the neck portion coming down to right where the armhole is, where the armpit is going to be on the sweater. Once we've created our chains, we will then turn our work and we will single crochet in the second chain from hook. So I want to make sure I never count the loop on my hook, and I count 1, 2 chain. And in that second chain there, I will place my hook directly into that chain, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, draw through 2. And I am using an H hook for those of you who are curious, which is a 5mm. Once I've done my single crochet in the second chain from hook, you'll notice in the pattern there is a star next to the written instructions. It's an asterisk, and it says chain 3. So I will chain 3 stitches, 2, 3. It says skip 2 foundation chains, so I come back here to my beginning chains, and I'm going to skip 2, so count 1 and 2, and be careful you don't accidentally count the chain that you've already worked into. Once you've skipped those chains, you will single crochet in the next chain, so that next chain. So essentially, I'm single crocheting in the 3rd chain from where I had just finished the previous one. So I singled, and you'll notice that it has a repeat from star to the end. So I will go back to the star, which means I chain 3, I skip 2, and I single crochet in the next. And I will do this all the way down all of these stitches, these chains, and I will end with the single crochet all the way down here at the end. So let me do a couple more, and then I will have you meet me at the end of this row. There is my chain 3, skip 2, put a single crochet in the next. Chain 3, skip 2, put a single crochet in the next. Pretty simple. I'm to the end of the row and I will finish off my chain 3, skip 2, and a single crochet in my very last one right there. So what I have left here, if I were to count, I have 23 chain 3 spaces. And what we will do when we go to make the yoke part of our sweater is we will begin to build our stitches in those chain 3 spaces, which is great because we don't have to go searching and seeking out the chains themselves to work into them. We can go into that really big space created by the chain 3s, making our crochet experience a lot easier. Let me show you what I mean. So I pick up my work, I will go ahead and give it a turn, and then I will start off with a chain 3. Now this chain 3 counts as a double crochet now and throughout according to the pattern. One thing I'm going to do, just so that you guys are on the same page as I am, is I'm going to use a removable stitch marker and I'm placing it in the chain stitch behind the loop on my hook. And what that will do, it will let me know, hey Marley, that's the last stitch of this row. So that way when I come back on my next row, I know that that's the last place I need to make a stitch. Once I've marked that stitch, again, that's not in the pattern, that's just a little tip from me to you, okay? Once I have that chain 3 marked, I can go on and work in pattern. And you'll notice in the instructions, there is that star there. And I will go ahead and do 2 double crochet into that whole chain 3 space. So I've yarned over my hook, go into the space, yarn over, pull up a loop. So I have 3 loops on my hook. Yarn over, draw through 2, yarn over, draw through 2. That's 1 double crochet. Yarn over my hook, go into the same chain 3 space, yarn over my hook, pull up a loop. Yarn over my hook, draw through 2, yarn over my hook, draw through 2. So I've completed 2 double crochets into 1 chain 3 space. The next part of the instructions say to chain 1 and then repeat from star. So the star once again was to put 2 double crochets in the next chain 3 space. So there's my next chain 3 space. I will work a double crochet and then work 1 more double crochet. See how easy it is just to go in that really big space. I don't have to go and fight through these chain stitches. I will chain 1 and work it all the way down this row. So along the entire row, I want to make sure I do that repeat of 2 double crochets, chain 1 into those chain 3 spaces. Let me get to the end of the row and show you how to finish it off. I'm to my last chain 3 space and I want to make sure I do 2 double crochets, but I will not do a chain 1 before I finish off with a double crochet directly into that single crochet at the end of my row. Okay, so my work looks a little something like this. We're now ready to move on to row 3, which is really simple because it's comprised of single crochets and chains. Go ahead and turn your work and you will start off with a chain 1. Once you've done that chain 1, go ahead and put a single crochet into this very first double crochet. It's the last stitch we did. If you want to use a second removable stitch marker, now is the time to do that. If you take your stitch marker and place it directly into the top of that single crochet you just finished, and just let it hang out there. And that'll let you know on the next time you come back down here, that's the last stitch you'll work into. It will help you make sure that your edges are nice and straight. That's the only reason I'm adding those markers to my work. The next part of the instructions have the asterisks, so we will do our chain 4, 2, 3, 4, and then we need to put a single crochet into this chain 1 space. Just like we worked these double crochets into the chain 3 space on the row below, we will put a single crochet into that entire space of that chain 1 that's between all of these 2 double crochet stitches. Once you've done your single crochet, you will go ahead and continue on with a chain 4, and then move to the next chain 1 space and work a single crochet. What we're doing by doing the single crochet and then chain 4 is we're creating the next space that we will be working into on the next row. Just as when we did row 1, we were creating these chain 3 spaces. When we are creating we are now creating these chain 4 spaces on row 3. So that way when we come back on row 4, we have a place to work those stitches. Let's go ahead and continue on doing this all the way down the row. I've worked into my last chain 1 space, and I will finish off with a chain 4 and then place a single crochet into the 3rd chain of my turning chain. So remember when I marked that chain? That's awesome because I don't have to worry about what stitch I'm supposed to put this last single crochet into because I've already have it marked. That's one of the great things about being able to use stitch markers. Now I have completed row 3 and I'm ready to begin row 4. For row 4, once again, you want to make sure you turn your work, and we will chain 3, which begins with a double crochet. Remember, our chain 3 counts as a double crochet. I will remove this marker that I used before, and I will move it up to place it into that chain stitch right behind the loop on my hook. Again, that just gives me a big signal to what that last stitch is for me. Now we'll go on in pattern, and you'll see that we have the star once again, and we will be placing 3 double crochets all into this chain 4 space. So remember, you do not have to fight with your hook into the actual chains. Just put your hook directly into that big gaping hole of a space and just work 3 double crochets. Once you've done 3 double crochets, chain 1 and repeat that. So you move to the next chain 4 space, go in and complete your 3 double crochets until you get to the end of the row. At the end of the row, we will finish off with 3 double crochets into the last chain 4 space, and then we will place a double crochet in the very last stitch of the row. I'm on the last chain 4 space right here, and I'm making sure I place my 3 double crochets in the chain 4 space, and then I will place my double crochet into my last single crochet, which I have marked, making it very convenient for me to know exactly where the edge of my work is. Work my double crochet, and my row 4 is complete. Now on my row 5, when I come back, it's very similar to what I did on row 3 in that I will do a single crochet, but instead of doing a chain 4 here, I will do a chain 5. So I will chain 5, single crochet into the space, chain 5, single crochet into the space, so on and so forth. Let me get you started on that. I begin with my chain 1, and I will place my single crochet into this very first stitch right here. So once I complete that, I can move my marker up so that way I know exactly where the end of my row is. And I will repeat, you do not have to use a marker. It just makes things a little bit easier, especially if you're not very good at remembering where the end of your row is. So I'm placing my marker directly into that single crochet, and I will do a chain 5, which is, this is the start of my repeat, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then I come over here to where this chain 1 space is, and I go into that space and work a single crochet. Then I repeat. I chain 5. I will go ahead, cross all of these double crochets to this space and work a single crochet. Chain 5. Skip all of these, go into the space and single crochet. At the very end, I will finish off this row with a chain 5 and a single crochet into the top of my double crochet, which is already marked. I'm to the end, so I will do the chain 5, and then I will place my single crochet into that marked stitch, which is the 3rd chain of my turning chain, and I have finished off row 5. Now, we've already noticed that we have increased from a chain 3 to a chain 4. Now we've just done a chain 5. For row 6, go ahead and turn your work, and you start off with your chain 3 just like normal. Go ahead and move up your stitch marker. Place it into the chain behind the loop on your hook, just like before. And we will jump into the pattern. You will place 3 single crochets into this first chain 5 space. 1, 2, and 3. Now I want you to chain 2. 1, 2. Whereas before we did a chain 1, you need to chain 2 here, okay? That's what allows us to jump over with this extra width that we're creating. We'll then yarn over, do 3 double crochets in the next chain 5 space, and chain 2. Do 3 double crochets in the next chain 5 space, chain 2. 3 double crochets in the next chain 5 space, chain 2. You will do this all the way down to the end of the row, and you'll end at the very end of the row with 3 double crochets in this last chain 5 space, and then you will end with a double crochet right here into this single crochet. I'm at the end of row 6 here, and I'm finishing off with my 3 double crochets, and I will place my last double crochet into my marked stitch and move on to row 7. For row 7, we start off with a chain 1, place a single crochet into that first stitch just like we've been doing all along, and I can move up my marker into the single crochet I just completed, and I move on. So this time I will chain 5, and I will single crochet in the next chain 2 space, and then I chain 5. This is very similar to what we've been doing all along. Go ahead and finish off this row and make sure you do a single crochet in the top of the stitch at the end of the row. I'm at the end of my row 7, putting a single crochet into that marked stitch, and I'm ready to begin row 8, which for the size I'm making is the final row, but if you're making any one of the 4 larger sizes, you will continue on through row 10. Let's go ahead and take a look at the instructions. We begin with the chain 3, just like we've been starting all along, and that does count as a double crochet. So I will be working into that 3rd chain, so I'm going to mark it. And then the next part of the instructions, you'll see that we have the asterisk, which we are used to, but now we have some parentheses. And these parentheses mean that we will do everything inside of them into the one space. So you'll see there that it says 2 double crochet, chain 1, 2 double crochets, all into the chain 5 space. So I've just done 2 double crochets, chain 1, and then 2 double crochets. And I've placed all of those stitches into one chain 5 space. Then I go ahead and chain 1, and I repeat. So I have this whole chain 5 space next to it. I place 2 double crochets, chain 1, and then 2 double crochets, all into that chain 5 space. And I will repeat this to the last chain 5 space, where I will do everything inside the parentheses, and then I finish off with a double crochet into my single crochet at the end of the row. I'm to the end of my row, and I've just placed my 2 double crochets, chain 1. I'm placing my next 2 double crochets into that space, and I finish off with my double crochet into my marked stitch. Now, one thing I want to point out is when you finish row 8, once again, if you're making the size small, you would stop here. But if you're making any 4 of the larger sizes, you will begin to build upon the stitches you just made again and create an even wider around the body yoke. I want to point this out though. Notice what we did here with our 2 double crochets, chain 1, 2 double crochets, chain 1, 2 double crochets, chain 1, 2 double crochets. It's very, very, very similar to what we did right down here on our second row where we did 2 double crochets, chain 1, 2 double crochets, chain 1, 2 double crochets. Whereas on row 2, we put our 2 double crochets into our chain 2 space. On row 8, we put our 2 double crochets, chain 1, 2 double crochets, all into that chain 5 space. The reason I'm pointing this out is because the next 2 rows for the 4 larger sizes are not difficult. They aren't anything different than what you've already done because we've essentially just established another row 2 for you. And then when you go to row 9, you're going to notice that's very similar to row 3. And when you go to row 10, that's very similar to row 4. Once you're finished with either row 8 or row 10, depending on the size you're making, it's time to move on to the body. So the first thing we need to do is separate out the arms where the sleeves would go. So let's move on to that part next. You're ready to begin the body of your work, but let's take a look at the yoke as we've already created it. As you take a look down here, you can see this is my yoke portion that I've already created. And when I fold this down upon itself, you can see that my 2 markers kind of show where my front edge butts up. And I have this nice portion of the sweater that is the yoke of the sweater that would go around the top of the little girl. What we need to do now is separate for the body, meaning we need to take these sleeve portions over here and divide them off from the body stitches. So this next set of instructions might seem really confusing just looking at them on the pattern, but as I walk you through and explain what all of these numbers and brackets and parentheses mean, I really have full confidence that you'll be able to achieve success on your body of the sweater. So let's go ahead and jump in with that, okay? As you know, I'm making a size small and I just finished a row 8 of the yoke, so I'm ready to begin row 1 for the body of the sweater. We begin with the chain 1 and a single crochet into that very first stitch. I will go ahead and continue to move up my marker just like I've done before, just to make sure that my edges are nice and straight. What you'll notice now is that in the written instructions, there is a bracket and there's a series of instructions within that bracket. And then after the bracket, this is the first time we're really seeing the different numbers as they are presented for the different sizes. Meaning we have a number on the outside that says it's number 7, and then we have numbers within the parentheses, which refer to the size you're making. So this will be the first point that you would come across a place in the pattern besides the chain amount that you've highlighted to highlighted the number that pertains to the size you're making. Just remember, I'm making a size small, so when I say numbers that might be different from yours, that's why that is, okay? So here we go. Once we get past that first single crochet, we have a bracket, and the bracket says chain 3, and then single crochet in the next chain 1 space. Well, we are real familiar with that. We've been doing that all along, right? So chain 3, and then single crochet in the next chain 1 space. Well, you want to make sure that you're only doing this series of instructions within the bracket, the chain 3 and the single crochet, for the number of times listed after the bracket. So for me, I have to do this a total of 7 times. For you, it might be 7, 8, or 9. So make sure you have that number highlighted. Let me go ahead and get my 7 times right here completed. When you need to go back and count, just kind of talk your way through the pattern. We started with our single crochet and we jumped into the bracket. Chain 3, 1 single crochet, that's 1 repeat. Chain 3, 1 single crochet, that's 2 repeats. Chain 3, 1 single crochet, that's 3 repeats. 4 repeats, 5 repeats, 6 repeats, 7 repeats. So I know I've repeated that 7 times, and it's time for me to move on in the pattern. I can now see that I am supposed to chain 6, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That number may be different for you, so make sure you check your pattern. And this chain 6 is the underarm. So the next set of instructions indicate that we need to skip some chain 1 spaces, and that's going to give us our sleeve. So for me, I need to skip 7 chain 1 spaces. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 chain 1 spaces. Once I've skipped those 7 spaces, I need to go ahead and single crochet in the next space. So I will place a single crochet in that next chain 1 space. And what you get looks a little bit like this. We've created our stitches here on the front. We have 6 underarm stitches, and then all of these skip stitches here are the sleeve of the sweater. Now, the next set of instructions, I will be working on the back of the sweater. So we come up to a bracket again. So everything that's within that bracket is what we will repeat for the amount or the number of times as indicated after the bracket. So make sure you're paying attention to the size you're doing. For me, I need to repeat the bracket instructions 16 times. So the bracket is just like the one before. It's chain 3, single crochet in the next chain 1 space. So that would be 1 repeat. I have 15 more to do. Chain 3, single crochet in the next chain 1 space. I have 14 more to do, so on and so forth. Go ahead and get yours completed, and then we will do another underarm and break off for the sleeve. Let's go back, and I'm going to count just to make sure I have the right amount. So that was my first single crochet. And then here is my repeat. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 repeats. Just like your sweaters at home, you really want your fronts to be symmetrical. So just as I chained 6 down here for my underarm and then skipped those 7 chain 1 spaces for the sleeve, chances are that's exactly what I'm going to do over here because I've already completed the back of my sweater. So what I will do here is chain 6, and remember this is a different number for the different sizes out there. I will skip 7 chain 1 spaces. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Now, this is important because the next set of instructions are the bracket once again, but you'll notice this time the bracket has us begin with a single crochet and then chain 3. So that's important because we are going to start off with our bracket repeat with the single crochet in the next chain 1 space. So I will do my single crochet right there. You'll notice there's my underarm, here are my sleeves, and then I chain 3. That would count as 1 repeat. Then I would do it once again, single crochet in the next chain 1 space, and then chain 3. I do this to the end of this row, repeating a total of 7 times, just like before. And then I end with the single crochet in the last double crochet, which I still have marked with my marker so I don't have to search for it. I know exactly where it is. I'm almost to the very end right here. I will chain 3. That finishes my last repeat. I end with a single crochet in that last double crochet, which is marked, which is the 3rd chain of my turning chain. And I'm at the end of my row, and I've completed the first row of my body. You should be ready to begin row 2 of the body. We start off with the chain 3, and I will go ahead and place my marker in that 3rd chain, and this does count as a double crochet. You'll notice in the next set of instructions, we have a bracket again, and this is the first time we're introduced to the cluster. We're going to do a cluster in the next chain 3 space, right there, and we will do that all the way to the underarm chains. When we get to our underarm chains, we will actually work into those chain stitches for this row. This is very similar to what we do when we worked into our foundation chain stitches, because those underarm stitches we're establishing the pattern for this entire row. Okay, so let's go ahead and learn how to do the cluster. For the cluster stitch, as I told you at the start of this video, you can find those instructions on the written pattern near the start where it says special stitches. For the cluster, it says to yarn over your hook and go into the space indicated. So we will be going into this chain 3 space. We'll go in, yarn over, and pull up a loop. So we have 3 loops on our hook. Then we'll yarn over and draw through 2. We have partially completed a double crochet. Now you yarn over your hook, go into that same chain 3 space, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, draw through 2. So we've partially completed our second double crochet. We have to do that one more time because if you notice, this set of instructions are in a bracket once again, and it tells you how many times to complete that. So now that I've done that twice, I have 4 loops on my hook. I will yarn over and draw through all 4 loops on my hook, and I've completed 1 cluster stitch. Once you've completed the cluster stitch, you jump in with chain 3. Because all of these instructions are in a bracket, I have to repeat this all the way to the underarm. So I move to the next chain 3 space, I yarn over my hook, go into the space, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, draw through 2. I've partially completed 1 double crochet. I have to do that 2 more times. Yarn over my hook, go into the space, yarn over my hook, pull up a loop, yarn over my hook, draw through 2. Yarn over my hook, go into the space, yarn over my hook, pull up a loop, yarn over my hook, draw through 2. I have 4 loops on my hook. I yarn over, draw through all 4, and chain 3. I will repeat this all the way to the underarm. I'm to my underarm stitches and I have 6 chains here. What's great is I don't have to work into these individual chains. Ellen's written the pattern so that way I can go into this big space. So I'm going to continue on with my cluster pattern here, but for my size, I will put that cluster pattern into this space 2 times. For you, it might be that you're putting it into that space 3 times. So let's go ahead and place my first cluster and then chain 3 and then my second clusters. There's 1, 2, 3 partially completed doubles, finish them off, and then chain 3. Now that I have placed all of those into my underarm space, I go ahead and I repeat all of those instructions to the end of my project. So when I get over here to this second underarm, I will place those clusters and chain 3 into this next chain 6 underarm, and I work all the way clear to the end, and then I finish off with a double crochet in my marked stitch at the end of this row. This is not anything unfamiliar, I don't think. Now that you know how to do the cluster stitch, it's simply placing all of those stitches in the chain spaces. So we don't have to fight working into chains or into actual stitches. We're working into those full spaces. And just remember, the cluster is essentially partially completed double crochets 3 times. So go ahead and get to the end of this row. That way I can show you the next row for the body. I'm placing my final double crochet in my marked stitch from the row below, just like so. And the next part of the body for row 3 has me turn my work, and I would jump in to a chain 1 single crochet into this first double crochet. I can move my marker up once again just to make sure I have my edges nice and straight. And then I jump into a pattern that we're already used to creating. So we will chain 3 and single crochet into the next chain 3 space. Chain 3, single crochet into the next chain 3 space. Chain 3, and what do you think we do? single crochet into the next chain 3 space. What we're doing here is we're creating these chain 3 spaces so that way on the following rows we can go and put our clusters into those chain 3 spaces. You'll notice in the special stitches section where it says cluster pattern, all we're doing is continuing on the established pattern we've created by placing these clusters into those chain 3 spaces. Because the body of your sweater does not need to be increased. We need to maintain the size that it is right now. So you are not increasing your stitches at all. We're simply making our body of the sweater longer. Super easy, not very hard, and I know you can do this. You'll notice in the pattern that it states how many rows you need to work before you are to the end of the body of the pattern, and that's when you would jump to the border. When you move on to the border, you'll notice in the written pattern that you already know all of these stitches, and it's really just a way to clean up the final edges of your sweater. So let's take a look at the final sample so you can see what's going on. As you look down here, you can see the border is just made up with single crochets and chains. If I separate this out, you can see how they are spaced out all the way around. You work 2 rows of the border along the bottom edge, and then you work 1 full round so that way it cleans up the side of the cardigan as well, but it's all done again with the single crochets and these chains. It's very easy, and I know you can do it, especially now that you know how to read a pattern. Remember, everything that's within the brackets indicates that you have to do all of that repeated the number of times that's after the bracket. Once you've established that, the rest is cake. You've got this. Single crochets and chains, psh, please. You've been doing that since the very beginning. Now that you know how to do the border, we've done the yoke, we've done the body, you can do the border. Let's learn how to do the sleeves because that might be something you've never done before. We've separated stitches out for the sleeves, but how do you go back and work into them so that way you actually have sleeves? Let me show you how to do that. The sleeve of your sweater was already established when we started the body of our sweater, correct? What we did was we created the yoke, which incorporated the upper body of the sweater and the top part of the sleeves. When we started the body of the sweater, we worked across one front of the sweater, skipped a bunch of stitches, chained some amount for the underarm, worked the back of the sweater, and then did it all again for the other side. Those skipped stitches that we did actually are the upper cup or the upper part of your sleeve. What we want to do now is join yarn down here in the underarm area and get an established pattern starting around the skipped stitches that we did and the created underarm. You will do this with the same color yarn that you used on your sweater. I will be using a different color yarn so that way you can see the new stitches as opposed to the old stitches and understand where it is you will be placing these stitches. First things first is you want to make sure the right side of your sweater is facing you because when we make these sleeves, we will be doing them in the round with the right side facing us throughout. First thing I want to do is grab my hook and place a slip knot directly onto my hook because we will be joining with a single crochet. With the underarm portion closest to you, you want to skip the first cluster, and in the space between the first cluster and the second cluster, go ahead and stick your hook in there. Once you've done that, let's complete a single crochet. So we have a loop on our hook, and then I went into the space, pulled up a loop, yarn over, draw through 2. So that's my first single crochet. I will now chain 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and I will skip this next cluster and I'm going to place a single crochet after that cluster, still into the armhole chain space. Do you see that? So I've placed a single crochet at this point, chained 4, skipped my second cluster, and placed a single crochet right there. Now that's where I need to stop for my size. You may need to go a little bit further. After that, you will then chain 4, Go to the next chain one space. Now this is very important. You are not going to be working into this chain one space, which was already worked into with the body of your fabric. You're going to go to the next one. So I've chained 4. I'm going over here to this chain one space. Again, not this one over here, and I will single crochet. Chain 4. Go to the next chain one space and single crochet. Chain 4. Next chain one space and single crochet. By the time I get all the way around all of these skip stitches, I will be able to join with a slip stitch to this first single crochet, and I will have 10 chain 4 spaces. You might have more because you're making a bigger size, but you'll be able to count when it's all complete. I'm going to get all the way around this sleeve and join up with you again when I get down here to do the slip stitch join. I am to the end of my round. I've just finished with the chain 4. I will join with a slip stitch to the first single crochet, and once I've done that, I can go back and count my chain 4 spaces to make sure I have the correct number. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I feel like it's important for you to go back and count at this point in time in case you accidentally put a single crochet where you were not supposed to and have too many, or you forgot one and have too few. It's very important you have the correct number at this point. Once you've joined with your slip stitch, you do not turn. We're going to maintain the right side of our fabric towards us. You will chain 3. This will count as a double crochet now and throughout, and we will begin with a cluster into this chain 4 space. So I will work my cluster stitch, which we're very familiar with because we just did them on the body. Once I've done that, I can move on and continue on around the row. This row is really establishing your pattern stitch, and it's what you will create the rest of your sleeve. It will match the body of your sweater. So in reality, once you get past row 1 of the sleeve, you know what to do for the rest of it because you've already done it. The only difference here is that instead of going back and forth, you will be joining with a slip stitch to work in the round. Let me go ahead, get around the first round of the sleeve so I can show you how to join with a slip stitch at the end of this round. I'm finishing up my last cluster right here for this round, and I will do my chain 3, and into this first chain 3 I did right here, I want to make sure I put my slip knot into the 3rd chain of that chain 3. So I go into the chain, yarn over, pull up a loop, and then pull that loop on my hook. So I've created a nice join. Round 3 does not have you turn. You begin with your chain 1. You'll single crochet into this first stitch right here, and then we begin to establish once again a space for us to be able to create those cluster stitches for subsequent rows. So as I do my chain 4, I then skip all the cluster and then do a single crochet into that chain 3 space. You carry on with the chain 4 and the single crochet into the chain 3 spaces to the end of this round. You will join with a slip stitch to the first single crochet. You will then repeat rounds 2 and 3 for either 2, 3, or 4 times, depending on the size you're making. Once you've done that, you will finish off your work and your sleeve is complete. Don't forget, there are 2 sleeves to this sweater, so you have to do this again to the 2nd sleeve. But by now, you're pretty used to these stitches, and so it's going to go by really quickly. Now that you've finished the sleeves, the last bit of the sweater are the ties, and that's what is used to keep the cardigan closed. Let's take a look at what they look like on the sample. As I open this up here, you can see the ties are actually added to the wrong side of the cardigan. They're worked on the wrong side of the cardigan onto the actual body stitches of the cardigan. They are so super easy to do. It's just a matter of chains and single crochets, which by this point I know for a fact you know how to do, so I don't think I need to show you how to do that. One of the biggest selling points of a sweater like this is that there is no seaming. This is a seamless sweater. So once you finish off those ties, your sweater is 100% complete, ready to be wrapped up and gifted to your favorite little girl. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and you will run out, grab yourself some Red Heart with Love yarn, a size H crochet hook, and download this free pattern. It's a lot of fun to make. Honestly, you could whip it up in no time. The stitches are really easy. And now that I've shown you how to do the cluster stitch and I've shown you how to do the construction, I really don't think you're going to have any problem at all. If you do decide to make this sweater, please share with me over on the Marley Bird Facebook page. It's just facebook.com/Marley Bird. I would love to see your progress. And if you're so inclined, go ahead and share with Ellen Gormley. She is gocrochet.com. You can check out more of her designs over there. And I know that she has some over here on the redheart.com website. I'm Marley Bird, proud spokesperson for Red Heart Yarns, and I hope you have a great day. Thanks. Hey, don't leave yet. I'm sure there are other videos here that you will enjoy. Go ahead and check out some of my knitting and crochet videos, as well as some of my crafting videos. You will love them, I promise. If you hit subscribe, you'll be up to date whenever there's a new video released. And as my kids say, don't forget to smash that like button. Bye.